For those of you who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I run the Lsat Blog. I also host the Lsat Unplugged YouTube channel and podcast. So I'm just going to share with you a little bit on each of those before we jump in. So this is the Lsat Blog. This is the page with free stuff. At the top, there's a free stuff tab. So you can check out things on games, reasoning, reading comp, LSAT schedules, test day prep. The LSAT schedules in particular are especially popular. I have week by week ones. I have day by day ones for all different periods of time. I've also got the Lsat Unplugged YouTube channel at youtube.com/LSATblog, where I've got all sorts of different lessons. I have recordings of classes here in New York City where I'm based. I have playlists for games, reasoning, and reading comp, as well as test day prep. I also have discussions with folks like a former NYU Law admissions dean, former LSAT question writer, coaching sessions with actual LSAT students, as well as other live online LSAT classes like this one right here. I've also got the Lsat Unplugged podcast that I'll share with you. It's on iTunes. As you can see there, I'm pretty much releasing new episodes every single day, sometimes multiple within a day. And so I'm having discussions. I'm having classes like this. I'm having shorter bite-sized episodes on particular topics. So lots there for you to dive into. The podcast, Lsat Unplugged, is available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and pretty much everywhere else. Now, the agenda for today, I wanted to cover specifically the digital LSAT, some of the changes that are going on this year as they transition to the digital format. And I also want to talk about how to prep properly for the digital LSAT. So a couple of policy changes that have happened recently with the LSAT. It's gone from being offered only 4 times a year to now being offered nearly every month, which means 9 or 10 times a year. Going forward this year, it'll be in June and July, as well as September, October, and November. And also, LSAC has removed the limit on the number of times that you can retake the LSAT. So it used to be you could only take it 3 times within a 2-year period. That is no longer the case. Now, you can take it as many times as you want. So anyone taking it in June, I would recommend also taking it in July, because there's only about a 5-6 week period in between. So all you've got to do is stay fresh on the LSAT for another 5 or 6 weeks and retake it. And just through luck alone, you could score 2 or 3 points higher. And then if you study, of course, you could do even better than that. And even just getting a single point more on the LSAT, that could lead to thousands of dollars in scholarship money or getting into a better law school. So it's really a no-brainer to retake if you think you can do better next time around. Now, the LSAT, of course, is going digital. The June LSAT is the last time it'll be in the paper and pencil format. Starting in July, the administration in particular, half of test takers will receive the digital format on the tablet, half will receive the paper and pencil format. LSAC chooses for you, and you don't get any advance notice. Then in September, everyone's getting the digital format on the tablet. It will specifically be on a Microsoft Surface Go tablet. But for those of you who don't want to shell out for a Microsoft Surface Go, which is around $400 or so, there is a more affordable alternative that I want to share with you, and that is the Amazon Fire tablet, which is only around $150. So that's really not too bad. You can see here it's around $150 or so. It's the Amazon Fire. And of course, Amazon has a very liberal return policy, so you could always return it after you prep with it if you decide that you don't really want to keep it after all, if it didn't work for you. Just make sure that you also get a stylus to use along with it so that you can prep like you'll be taking the actual digital LSAT, because they'll be having a stylus for that one as well. Now, I want to show you what the digital LSAT looks like. So this is LSAC's site, familiar.lsac.org. And you can see here that they have some tutorials walking through digital LSAT. They also have some practice problems here for LSAT 71, 73, and 74 as well. So if we dive into 71, you can see a little bit more about what it looks like. You see here that you can underline things, you can highlight things, you can erase what you've highlighted, but you cannot draw freehand on the tablet the way that you'd be able to on a piece of paper, for example. It is quite a different experience So you just want to be ready for that difference, something to keep in mind. You could also see here as well that you have only the ability to see one question at a time. They let you flag questions as well, which is pretty cool. But aside from that, you can't draw freehand the way that you would be able to, for example, on a piece of paper or like a whiteboard, for example. So on a whiteboard, you might be able to draw something like this. You can't do anything like that on the digital LSAT. So it's extremely important that you get used to practicing like it'll be game day. And so I want to share with you a little bit of how things have changed. You used to have only a one-page layout for logic games, very limited space to draw on the rest of the screen, on the rest of the page. Then starting with LSAT Exam 66, which is the June 2012 LSAT, you had a two-page layout for logic games. So you had a bit more space to draw below the questions associated with each page. So it went from a one-page layout to a two-page layout, but starting with the digital LSAT, you won't have the ability to draw next to your questions. You'll draw separately on the scrap paper. And so I have a layout over here. You see that you have a full 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. You have your rules, your main diagrams, then your individual diagrams associated with each question. So that's another way to deal with the constraint where you can't draw on the tablet. And they're giving you a booklet of maybe 8 or 10 pieces of paper. And so there's not really a significant limit on the scrap paper, but you also do want to make sure that you're being very cleanly organized with that. As you saw also, you can see only one question at a time on the digital LSAT, when we're used to seeing previously, as you saw, you have maybe all the questions on one page pre-exam 66. Then with the two-page layout for games, you had them spread across 2 pages, but you could easily see everything at a glance. Now you're only going to be able to see question by question. And so what I've done to deal with that is I've actually cut out on a piece of paper like this. I just took a piece of paper, cut out a hole in it that fits one individual LSAT question at a time. So if you are prepping with the books, you can see the questions one by one and better simulate what it'll be like for you on LSAT test day. Another thing I want to talk a little bit about is getting used to reading dense text on a screen, because right now you're probably used to reading nothing more complicated than listicles and short online articles. So I want to show you a site that I really love called phrasereader.com. On this website, you can basically copy paste any text that you want, put it into this site, and they will let you play around with different reading speeds. So here I'm taking a random article from The Economist, because everybody loves to read The Economist for LSAT prep as a way to get familiar with something a little bit more complicated than the average clickbait. You take this, you copy paste it, you put it into phrasereader.com, and you click parse. And then you can set different reading speeds to help yourself get faster at reading at whatever speed you like. Because right now we're used to maybe reading at 200 words per minute, which is really quite slow actually. But on the LSAT, you're better off reading closer to 350 or 400 words if you want to read the average reading comprehension passage in 2 to 3 minutes or so. So that's one thing you could do. I chose this article from The Economist at random. You could really choose anything else at all that you like. What's important is that it's on maybe an 8th grade reading level. So if you look at like the Flesch-Kincaid scale for reading comprehension, it'll show you that the New York Times, for example, is on an 8th grade reading level versus an article in the New York Post or the Daily News, which is more likely to be on, for example, a 3rd grade reading level or a 5th grade reading level. And so reading things with more advanced vocabulary is extremely important just to get used to what you'll be dealing with on LSAT test day. Now, I suppose I could talk a bit more about how to structure your studying over the next couple of months if you're going for the June or July LSATs or beyond. The June LSAT, you have only about a month left at this point, a little more. So I'd say actually exactly a month. Now that I think about it, time flies, huh? So you have a month left. You really do want to focus on taking maybe one full-length timed exam per week. And hopefully you've been taking a couple of full-length timed exams already so that you've built your pacing and endurance. Because there are 3 phases of LSAT prep: accuracy, untimed, building the foundation first, then pacing with individual timed sections, and finally endurance with full-length timed exams. So those taking in June at this point, you want to focus more on the pacing and endurance, and hopefully you have a good foundation. On the other hand, if you're going for July, you want to prep for either paper or digital formats because you don't know what you're going to get. And given that you have closer to a month and a half for the July LSAT, you will also have some more time to work on your weak areas and detailed review, in addition to the full-length timed exams. Those of you going for the fall, you have closer to an ideal study timeline because you have really, at this point, 4 to 5 months or longer. And so those of you with that timeline, you can focus first on accuracy, working untimed, doing questions by type. The study schedules I referenced earlier are really useful for this to work through, let's say, logic games by type, then logical reasoning by type, then reading comprehension, then full-length timed exams. And so for the games, you do them untimed by type, easy ordering games, moderate difficulty ordering games, then the hardest ordering games, then easy grouping, moderate grouping, difficult grouping, and so on. Then logical reasoning by type, necessary assumption flaw, strengthen, weaken, etc., while staying fresh on games. Then add reading comprehension into the mix. Then after that, you start doing your full-length timed exams along with individual timed sections for pacing, and you work on your weak areas as you identify them, and also engage in excruciatingly detailed review of any question you got wrong or anything you were unsure of or you guessed where you were down to, like, let's say down to 50-50, and you got lucky, but maybe you still had some trouble with it, and it very easily could have gone the other way next time around. So for that reason, you want to review everything that gives you trouble and articulate it. Was it in the stimulus for logical reasoning? Was it misunderstanding the question stem? Or was it in the answer choices? If it was the stimulus, you want to see, was it identifying the evidence or the conclusion, or maybe the method of reasoning was confusing? Was it a confusingly worded question stem? Or was it in the answer choices? If it was in the answer choices, you want to see what was tempting about the wrong answer choice that made you pick it or consider it, and what ultimately made it wrong. And what was discouraging about the right answer choice that pushed you away from it, and what ultimately made it correct. You want to do this again and again and again, not necessarily for every question that you ever have difficulty with, because that might be too many to go through, but definitely the hardest ones. And I would say, honestly, you're better off spending more time reviewing what gives you trouble than just blasting through more and more exams and more questions to measure your results. I know it's really kind of addictive in a way to take exams and then see how you did, and especially to check them section after section or question by question rather than waiting until you've completed the exam. But the real value in doing LSAT problems is not simply to see what your scores are. It's nice to know, of course, but the real value is in learning from your mistakes and figuring out what gives you trouble and why, so that you can avoid making those same mistakes in the future. Because of course, the LSAT does repeat itself time after time, again and again. And so you could prep with nothing more than just 10 or so exams ever. Those 10 exams alone would be enough if you review them in sufficient detail. And of course, I do think it's worth taking more than 10 exams over time, maybe doing 10 untimed to build your foundation, and then another 10 as full-length timed exams, and then maybe in between those, another 5 or 10 as individual timed sections to deal with the pacing aspect of your prep. But 10 alone could be enough. 15 or 20 alone could be enough. Those of you going for the LSAT in the fall, I'd say you want to focus your prep on exams 62 to present, which is the books of 10, 62 through 71, 72 through 81, and then 82 through 87 as full-length timed exams. That is a great way to prep. You can get most of those exams in books of 10 on Amazon.com for about $20 each. Those of you who will be taking the digital LSATs, on LSAT site I showed you, there's a couple of exams published there already. They'll be adding more in the lead up to the fall. And if you have access to the PDFs, it's great to practice with the PDFs on the screen and do your work on scrap paper on the side. There are 3 things that I'm thinking majorly about with the digital LSAT right now in terms of prep. One of them is studying on a tablet or the computer versus paper. It's really important to ideally have a tablet, or if not that, at least the computer, so you can get used to doing problems on screen and doing the work on the scrap paper on the side. This is a very different experience from doing the digital LSAT practice on a paper version of the exam, where you can physically cross things off on the page and do your diagrams, for example, next to the question on the digital LSAT, you won't be able to do any of that. The next thing, of course, is using the scrap paper and getting used to being liberal with how much scrap paper you use, but also keeping it cleanly organized like I showed you earlier. And the third thing, like I mentioned earlier as well, is only being able to see one question at a time. So using those cutouts can be really useful for that, or narrowing your field of vision with a PDF, for example, or focusing what you have on the screen in front of you. The last thing I'd say also is, as a bonus thing, is kind of reading dense material on the screen versus paper. We're used to in college maybe reading difficult, dense text on paper in a book, but on the digital LSAT, we're used to, on digital in general, I'd say honestly, we're used to skimming more quickly because the quality of what we read on the screen is typically lower than what we read in a book. The bar is a lot higher for what makes it into a physical printed book than anything they publish online, for example. And so it's important to get used to reading dense material on the screen. So maybe get used to reading ebooks, and maybe not just novels, but, or maybe at least if they're novels, great works of literature, or if it's, or maybe nonfiction that's of a higher reading level. And of course, getting used to doing LSAT problems on the screen as well in addition. Anyway, I've said a lot for now, and I've many other thoughts I'll be sharing on the digital LSAT moving forward. So I'm gonna leave off here. But before I do, a few things I want to let you know about that I have going on now and in the near future. I'm teaching a live online LSAT masterclass. I currently have one going on that is leading up to the June LSAT. I've closed the doors to that one, but I am making it an option to get access to the recordings if you want to follow along each week. I will also be opening the doors to a new cohort of students going forward to this summer, actually, for the July LSAT. And so you can join the waitlist to be the first to know when I open the doors to the new cohort leading up to the July LSAT. I'll be running this group over the course of June to July. It has not started yet. And so join the waitlist on my site. I also am running a live weekend LSAT masterclass in New York City. I've actually closed the doors to that one already. I'm full up, no more applications. But if you want to be aware when I open the doors to a new masterclass in New York City later this year, just add your name to the waitlist and I'll let you know when I open the doors to a new group for the fall. And then finally, I have a variety of on-demand LSAT course packages that you can join anytime. Those are on-demand, watch at your leisure. You can binge watch all the videos if you want. They're combinations of video courses and written materials. So if you learn best through a mix of video and written, the online on-demand courses include both of those. And then there's also, like I said, there's the live online LSAT masterclass and the live weekend class here in New York City. I'll share the links in the comments below this video if you want to find out more and join the waitlist for those. Anyway, folks, again, thanks for watching. All the best with your LSAT prep as you move forward. Happy to help however I can. I do want to let you know of a few other things I have going on. I have the LSAT Unplugged podcast on iTunes, and I'll share that with you right here. I also have the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel at youtube.com/LSAT Blog. I particularly want to draw your attention to the online LSAT live classes where I go into more depth on 2019 LSAT changes and digital LSAT prep. I think that's something that you definitely don't want to miss out on there. You can see they're quite long, a half hour, a full hour, several full hour Q&A sessions. The discussions with the former NYU Law Admissions Dean have been especially popular. The coaching sessions have also been quite popular. And then I have playlists targeted for individual sections of the exam. Plus, of course, there are the LSAT study plans. I have the week by week, the day by day. That's the most popular thing on my site, aside from, of course, the free stuff on every aspect of LSAT prep and law school admissions as well. So that's all for today. I'm going to leave off here, but thanks for watching. All the best with your prep, and feel free to reach out if you need anything at all. I love hearing from students. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.